Chapter 131, Cover Strategy. Boneyard could be considered fairly spacious and empty. Looking at the map, gravestones, coffins, and withered trees were the three most prominent scenery. As pro players, Tiny Herb's 4 players weren't scared. Seeing that their opponents had chased them, they immediately began seizing the strategic high grounds. Right now, the 4 were together. But if they still ran away, then it'd be quite difficult to explain. The 4 characters each held their own positions. From an overall perspective, their coordination wasn't bad. Yishu saw this and immediately blocked Steamed Bun Invasion from advancing. Don't rush. My brick has already been waiting impatiently for too long, Steamed Bun Invasion said. This is a real team battle, Yishu said. Have you watched any of the Pro Alliance's matches? Steamed Bun Invasion obviously said that he hadn't. Seven Fields said he did. Sleeping Moon said obviously. Tang Ru didn't say anything. She had watched a total of 1, so she didn't know if that counted as having watched them or not. Remember their positions well. We'll attack them one by one, Yishu said. Brother expert, you should set it up, Seven Fields made a fist. Cross formation. Steamed Bun Invasion at the front. Seven Fields on the left. Little Moon Moon in the middle. Tang Ru at the back. Myself at the right. Everyone follow me while staying in formation. Don't break order, Yishu said. Sleeping Moon heard Little Moon Moon. He didn't want to cooperate, but he was at the middle. The others all depended on him as the center. The 4 instantly moved to their front, back, left, right position and he had no choice but to cooperate. Lord Grimm moved and the 4 immediately followed. Lu Fei's fallen angel was currently hiding behind a coffin. With regards to gunners, those types of long-ranged classes, using a cover when fighting with an opponent was a common strategy. But using a shield had its advantages and disadvantages. When they hid, the cover blocked not only the enemy's field of view, but also their own. So they had no way of knowing the entire situation. However, in a team, this flaw was covered. Team members could communicate with each other to understand the parts they couldn't see. White Night, Black Day and Ashen Moon weren't considered long-ranged classes, but they still found a place to hide. With their overlapping views, they could understand the field clearly. In the end, pro players were still pro players. This type of defense for attack strategy was quite simple for them. The other side is in a cross formation. The Brawler at the front, Striker on the left, Blade Master in the middle, Battle Mage in the back, Lord Grimm on the right. White Night, Black Day informed everyone of their opponent's positioning. They're advancing towards Yifan, Gao Yingji said. Ah, Chao Yifan tensed up. Fei Fei get their attention, Zhou Yebai said. At this moment, Xiaoyun wasn't there yet, so he acted as the temporary leader for now. Okay, Lu Fei answered. She suddenly moved. Fallen Angel rolled out from a coffin, crouched, *CKED her gun, and fired. Pung, a gun sound rang out and blood blossomed out from Fallen Angel's forehead. Lu Fei was extremely astonished. She didn't think that she would be the first one to be hit by a shot. On the opponent's side, smoke slowly drifted out from the tip of Lord Grimm's umbrella-like thing. Bullets affected the character's positioning. Hand cannons had the largest pushback and had the highest attack. Next was the rifle and last was the handgun. The myriad manifestation umbrella's bullets belonged to the rifle type. Its firing rate wasn't as fast as the revolver or handgun, but it had a higher impact. Fallen Angel staggered back after being hit by the bullet. Lu Fei's intended surprise attack flew off. But as a pro player, she obviously possessed the ability to adapt. Lu Fei controlled Fallen Angel to run back to position, while continuing to fire back. Pung, a second shot rang out and more blood blossomed from Fallen Angel's body. Her body was hit askew and her counterfire missed again. Lu Fei was even more astonished. Her opponent's timing was too perfect, just happening to hit the instant she fired. If she had been hit slightly earlier, then Lu Fei would have had time to adjust her shot, so it wouldn't go crooked. If she had been hit slightly later, then obviously, Falling Angel's bullet would have already flew out and both of them would be hit. In the end, her opponent's bullet had hit her twice in the instant her Fallen Angel had fired, making Lu Fei unable to adjust in time. As a gunner, Lu Fei knew how difficult it was to pull off such precise timing. She had always thought that type of legend that could only be done in theory, yet she had just been hit twice like that just now. The opponent's cross formation had already adjusted towards a new target. They were now rushing towards her. No matter what had happened, on a whole, she had grabbed the enemy's attention. Lu Fei didn't dare remain out in the open. She hastily ran towards another hiding place. Pung pung. 2 shots in a row hit the tombstone she was hiding behind. Stone broke off, swirling in the air. Afterwards, she heard a muffled sound as if something had smashed into the tombstone. It didn't seem like a bullet. Lu Fei was very curious, but she didn't dare expose her head. No, the angle wasn't good. It was a bit under. Yishu was still leisurely instructing Steamed Bun Invasion, telling him that the angle the brick he had just thrown was off. It looks like the distance between us is a bit too far, Steamed Bun Invasion asked. You can jump up to make the brick fly farther, Yishu said. Oh right, Steamed Bun Invasion exclaimed. Crash, another thing directly hit the tombstone. That sound resounded in her ears and she heard it too vividly. Lu Fei jumped up in fright. What was that? Lu Fei asked her teammates. Brick. The people who saw couldn't help but answer. Brick? He's practicing what angle he needed to throw the brick and one just happened to smash into the tombstone you were hiding behind, Zhou Yebai said. Practice? Lu Fei was speechless. What exactly were they doing? Crash, another brick came over, making the tombstone tremble as if it were going to break. One brick after the other. They weren't too frequent. After all, brick wasn't a normal attack, but a skill with a cooldown. She obviously knew what the cooldown was for brick. She had originally calculated the time and braced for the impact. But the fourth one didn't arrive. Lu Fei made Fallen Angel sneak a peek. In the end, just as half her head extended out, crash, a brick smashed into her forehead and she began seeing stars. She had actually been dizzied by it. Soon after, 2 pung pung sounds rang out. She had been hit twice by Lord Grimm again. Lu Fei wanted to dodge, but had no way of doing so. Fallen Angel was still dizzy. Half of her head was still exposed to the outside. Did it hit? Was I hit? Clearly, the 5 players had closed in, close enough that Lu Fei could hear her opponent's voices. No. She exposed her head, which was why you were able to hit her. If not, then it would have went over, Yishu said. Why did that idiot expose her head? Steamed Bun Invasion said. You acted too slowly, so she probably did it because she was anxious, Yishu said. Ha ha ha, she's fallen in love with my brick, Steamed Bun Invasion said delightedly. You just watch, Lu Fei was extremely furious. She was even too angry to type it out and directly roared it out. Ha ha, we're coming. Steamed Bun Invasion unexpectedly answered back. Lu Fei almost collapsed from anger. Her roar obviously wasn't directed at these 5 players. It was only because she was too angry to type it out. Even though, she may have been too far away in game for her teammates to hear. Don't forget that her teammates were all sitting together. Lu Fei's roar had directly penetrated her teammates' headphones. The 3 suddenly shivered. Yet in the end, Steamed Bun Invasion answered back. Don't panic, Zhou Yebai said in a low voice. Lu Fei's role was to attract the enemy's attention. Even though she had suffered a bit, her original aim had been reached. The 5 players were currently headed towards their trap. Little Jia, get ready, Zhou Yebai reminded Gao Yingji. Okay, Gao Yingji said. Chao Yifan was extremely lonely. He was also a part of the team, but he wasn't a part of the strategy. He didn't know if it was on purpose or not. But in brief, he had been forgotten. Ashen Moon was hiding behind a tombstone, staring at this ice-cold tombstone that represented the dead. Chao Yifan didn't know what to do. But he was already used to this sort of feeling. Move out, Zhou Yebai suddenly ordered. His White Knight Black Day and Gao Yingji's Weeping Crow flashed out from the left and right. Weeping Crow shook his sleeves, preparing to use a shadow cloak to bind the 5 players. On the side, Zhou Yebai was waiting for Weeping Crow's cloak. Afterwards, he would summon a phantom ghost and then follow up with a ghost slash. According to Glory's explanation, Ghostblades set up fields with special effects and summoned ghosts to assist them. This ability was named Phantom Ghost. Whether it was for an individual or a team, it was extremely useful as a support. White Knight Black Day was a level 26 Ghostblade and could summon the first Ghost Sword Soul. After a Sword Soul appeared, all teammates inside its boundary would have their strength and intelligence attributes raised. Of course, this was only limited to inside the boundary. There wouldn't be any effects outside of the boundary. If the Ghost's power could be applied whenever, Ghostblades would be unrivaled. Once the Witch's Shadow Cloak bound the enemies, he would use this interval to summon a Phantom Ghost and then kill or heavily injure the enemies within the boundary. This was Joe Yebai's plan. At this moment, he was waiting for Weeping Crow's Shadow Cloak to bind the enemies. Who knew that just as Weeping Crow threw out his skill, a sword light flashed over. No one knew who had acted first. With Gao Yingji's reaction speed and skill, he didn't think that he would lost to anyone when fighting for time. But this time, his opponent's skill had unexpectedly arrived first. Sword Draw's sword light arrived, making Gao Yingji feel extremely astonished. He could only helplessly choose to dodge it. Even if he directly took on the attack, there was no way his Shadow Cloak would hit. Just like this, he and Joe Yebai's plans had been easily crushed. The player who had sent out the attack wasn't Lord Grimm and was impressively Sleeping Moon. Though it was true that this attack had been made on Yishu's orders. When Yishu yelled out for him to attack, he hadn't even seen the target yet. His attack wasn't any different than sending it out with his eyes closed. In the end, just after his attack was sent out, he saw Weeping Crow jump out. Let alone Gao Yingji, even Sleeping Moon, who had sent out the attack, was extremely astonished. In Sleeping Moon's eyes, his attack hadn't hit because of himself, but rather because someone had stupidly jumped out towards the attack. Cover strategies flaw. Even if they could mutually communicate their field of view, they could only use it to report to each other and reduce the dangers. In regards to their understanding of the situation at a moment's notice, it was still somewhat lacking. Chapter 132, Team Wiped Out. Since Shadow Cloak failed, it wouldn't be easy for Joe Yebai to use Phantom Ghost. Phantom Ghost wasn't an instant cast. It was a summoning skill that had a cast time. As a result, if he just openly began summoning, it would definitely be interrupted. Even though there was no way for Phantom Ghost to be openly cast, his White Knight Black Day was already standing out in the open. Seeing that his plan had failed, he immediately sent out a Ghost Slash. Phantom Ghosts obviously weren't the only skills that Ghostblades could use. They also had a few attack skills. Even though Ghost Slash was a low-leveled skill, its direct damage was quite high. However, it had a very long delay, so there were a lot of openings after using it. However, Joe Yebai had calculated the distance and determined that there was enough time for the delay to finish, which was why he so bravely decided to use this skill. A lot of Ghostblade skills were innately dark attributed. Ghost Slash was one of them and fit Boneyard's atmosphere well. A dark purple sword light came down like lightning with dense killing intent and extraordinary momentum. Unfortunately, White Knight Black Day had come out directly facing the cross formation's right side, Lord Grimm. Ghost Slash arrived and the myriad manifestation umbrella in Lord Grimm's hands suddenly opened. There was no other transformation. This time, it really was what it was. The umbrella really was an umbrella. Joe Yebai stared blankly. In his eyes, this form, this usage, obviously didn't make him feel as if it was an umbrella. In his eyes, it was clearly a shield. Apart from strengthening defense and absorbing damage, more importantly, shields provided strong resistances to knockbacks, knockups, stuns, bleed, dizzy, etc. all those status effects. Of course, the precondition was that you had to use the shield to block the opponent's attack first. As a result, from this perspective, besides the stats a shield provided, the surface area of a shield was also important to look at. A large surface area usually meant that it had a large volume. A large volume usually meant that it was heavy. Heavy usually meant that it would be a huge burden. A huge burden affected movement speed, attack speed, jump height, etc. This was why weight was an important factor to consider. Shields were extremely heavy equipment. A slightly larger shield wouldn't mean that it would only be a tiny bit heavier. If you only sought after the largest shield possible, then you would be moving extremely slowly like a turtle. But Lord Grimm's myriad manifestation umbrella was so large that Zhou Yebai even saw it as a bit shameless. His White Knight Black Day's ghost slash finally hit onto the myriad manifestation umbrella. Soon afterwards, he unexpectedly found that his slash had caused Lord Grimm to move back a bit. Ghost slash had a small blow-away effect, but it wasn't very strong. An ordinary level 25 shield could completely block this blow-away effect. But with Lord Grimm's shield, after being hit by the slash, even though the slash didn't make Lord Grimm completely fly away, there was still a slight knockback. Zhou Yebai saw immediately that even though its surface area was large, it was very light, so its resistance to status effects were extremely lacking. For this type of light shield, first, it had poor defense. Second, its durability was too low for a shield. Shields had their durability used up relatively quick compared to other equipments. Seeing how the shield in Lord Grimm's hands wasn't able to completely resist his gloss slash's blow-away effect, Zhou Yebai reckoned that if this shield was given to an MT like a knight, it might not even last for a single dungeon run. Zhou Yebai's judgment wasn't wrong at all. The myriad manifestation umbrella's shield form, like the other forms, had a weight of 2.3 kg. Its durability was only 23. For shields, this was a simply terrible number. However, the shield's base stats weren't bad. The level 25 myriad manifestation umbrella shield form had a 24% defense increase and a 16% damage absorption, equivalent to a level 35 purple shield. The myriad manifestation umbrella shield form had already been upgraded twice by strong spider silk and white wolf bristles, and was one of the first to reach level 25. Even though the myriad manifestation umbrella blocked the ghost slash, Lord Grimm still took some damage. But after eating the attack, the myriad manifestation umbrella immediately closed. In that instant, it felt like the umbrella had sucked in the ghost slash. The myriad manifestation umbrella then transformed into the battle lance form, which directly stabbed towards White Knight Black Day. No matter how pro Zhou Yebai was, this was the first time he had seen such a change. In the end, he found that there wasn't enough time for the delay to finish. His character was still in the middle of its animation, when Lord Grimm had sent a lance flying forward. Tang Ru's soft mist had also moved out at this moment. Her character looked just like the initial cloudy heavens with 7 ice chasers revolving around her. However, Xiao Yun's cloudy heavens had been tragically juggled around by Lord Grimm for 30 seconds and his ice chasers had disappeared one after the other. Right now, Soft Mist followed Lord Grimm's dragon tooth right after the stun wore off with her own dragon tooth. An ice chaser flew out and the stunned White Knight Black Day had no way of dodging it. The ice chaser smashed into him, ice blossoming across his face. His body immediately began emitting a chilly aura, entering a slowed state. Zhou Yebai wasn't even an opponent for Yi Shu, let alone both Yi Shu and Tang Ru. Yi Shu controlled him, while Tang Ru put out damage, making Zhou Yebai's White Knight Black Day's life drop down like flowing water. Ghostblades weren't a class with high defense. They wore cloth armor and were as defenseless as mages. 7 ice chasers fluttered towards White Knight Black Days like shining pearls. Chasers auto-chased the target. The only way for it to miss was to use an attack to destroy it. Zhou Yebai's hands went out of control. Of the 7 chasers, he was only able to hit down 2 of them. The other 5 all hit. Luckily, chasers were classified as magic attacks. Cloth armor may have low physical defense, but they had high magic defense. 7 Fields, Sleeping Moon, and Steam Bun Invasion now rushed forward under Yi Shu's commands. Yi Shu's Lord Grimm stepped aside. He used a circle swing picking up White Knight Black Day and flipping him over. Sleeping Moon immediately jumped to Lord Grimm's original position. Their coordination seemed a little rough, but when White Knight Black Day got up, he discovered he was now in the middle of the cross formation and was then attacked on all 4 sides by the 4 players. This was all done in the blink of an eye. Gao Yingji hastily controlled his Weeping Crow to fly over, but Yi Shu's Lord Grimm stepped out to block him. Disperse powder was thrown down. Lord Grimm leisurely opened up his umbrella and strolled over. After blocking disperse powder, he once again closed the umbrella and stabbed up at the flying Weeping Crow. No matter how fast Gao Yingji's reaction speed was, there was no way for him to dodge it. Following after, he used a circle swing and flung Weeping Crow into the center of the cross. Weeping Crow and White Knight Black Day were now back-to-back fighting against the encirclement. Lu Fei's fallen angel had been hoping for her teammates to come help her. However, she didn't yet have time to react after the tombstone incident, when Zhou Yebai and Gao Yingji one after another were thrown into a trap like fish. Lu Fei was aware that the situation wasn't looking good. She then suddenly saw Lord Grimm's figure flash by. Right when she began to panic, she was hit by a falling flower palm from behind and fallen angel was blasted away. Soft Mist lifted her spear, caught her, and then threw her into their encirclement too. It wasn't possible to only rely on Tang Ru and the other three to trap 3 pro players. But with Yi Shu's commands along with Yi Shu's own task of personally sending them over, the 3 pro players really did want to cry, but no tears came out. Pro players. In this moment, the 3 didn't feel that they were anymore. No matter who it was, Zhou Yebai and Lu Fei who had been in official matches, or the extremely talented and future star Gao Yingji, they had all fallen into the net like little fishes. Punches, bricks, slashes, stabs, bullets, whatever there was, they got. The 3 players were all looking for a chance to rush out. No one paid attention to who was who and they all shouted and yelled at each other. But no matter what they did, their opponents always seemed to be able to figure out what they wanted to do and took the initiative to stop their plans. The 3 players were completely desperate. Zhou Yebai's White Knight Black Day had the lowest defense of the 3 and was also the first to be thrown in. In the end, he was the first to die. Zhou Yebai furiously smashed his keyboard. His gaze suddenly shifted after thinking of something and then roared in rage, Yifan, where the F***CKRU? The forgotten Chao Yifan's ashen moon had actually been foolishly standing to the side the entire time. His teammates had never called for him to come up, so the opponents also ignored him. Seeing that even Gao Yingji had been easily thrown into the encirclement, Chao Yifan truly didn't know what to do. At this moment, he heard Zhou Yebai's roar. He no longer cared if he had the ability and stupidly rushed forward. Naturally, it turned out to be a tragedy. His skill level was the worst among the 4. In front of Yi Shu, how could he be a match? After a few rounds of combat face-to-face, Lord Grimm threw him into the encirclement too, which could be considered as having answered Zhou Yebai's question. Zhou Yebai helplessly fell from his seat. His roar at Chao Yifan had drained him. There was no way he actually placed his hopes on him. Even more so, when he had yelled, he himself had already died. At this moment, even Cloudy Heavens, who was heading over to their location, had stopped. Xiao Yun stupidly stared at the screens of his teammates next to him. He silently watched as the opponents killed them off one after another. Team wiped out. Even though they had been killed at different times, it was a fact that each of the 5 players had died once. The 5 players sat in front of their screen. Besides Xiao Yun, they were all staring at their corpses, somewhat at a loss. Lord Grimm and the others were still in the surroundings circling about. What were they saying? It was unfortunate that corpses would automatically have their sound cut off. At this moment, they weren't able to hear any voices or sounds as if they really were dead, just like how they were all feeling right now. This quote. When Xiao Yun made a mistake, he felt that he could force out an explanation. But now, the 4 other players had been wiped out by the opponents. There was nothing they could say about this. Even though they were only subs for the club, which 2 of them hadn't even had official match experience yet, in the end, they were still pro players. The 5 of them were players that could come out as team representatives at any time in a team competition. But now, in the game, in a team battle, with just one person as their objective, their team had been wiped out and none of their opponents had died. Even in an actual pro match, they probably wouldn't have suffered such a disastrous defeat. How annoying. As a level 27 sharpshooter, I don't have a lot of skills I can use. I'm so not used to it. Lu Fei was the first to speak. What a wise girl. She was the first to find an excuse. Yeah, it is a bit annoying. Zhou Yebai borrowed the excuse with great difficulty. That's what I said before. You finally understand was written all over Xiao Yun's face. Gao Yingji and Chao Yifan didn't say anything. Gao Yingji was an honest, introverted child and felt too embarrassed to make an excuse. As for Chao Yifan, would an excuse give them back face? He laughed bitterly. What was face? It's not like he'd ever had it before. Chapter 133, Measuring Skill. That night, Club Tiny Herb's reserve team slept extremely uneasy. They didn't go group together and look for trouble with Lord Grimm again. Even though almost everyone used the excuse, low-leveled characters didn't have every class skill available, so they weren't used to it. They all knew in their hearts that that wasn't an excuse. They were pro players. Just because they weren't used to it didn't mean that their team should get wiped out by in-game players, right? If that were true, then pro players weren't worth anything. The next day, Tiny Herb's main team and the reserve team met up with each other in the practice rooms and greeted each other. As pro players, they had to participate in the daily drills. Even though there was no lack of players who didn't want to practice, there were no such members in Tiny Herb. With Captain Wang Jiaxi's stare, half of the members were even too afraid to speak out. Whoa, did you not sleep? When Chao Yifan saw his good friend Gao Yingji, he jumped in fright. Gao Yingji's dark bags under his eyes like a panda. Gao Yingji muttered and didn't really answer him. Chao Yifan looked again. Xiao Yun, Zhou Yebai, and Lu Fei, which one of their complexions looked good? However, their minds were still somewhat better than Gao Yingji and the bags under their eyes weren't as heavy. And Chao Yifan? He hadn't felt any pressure. It wasn't like anyone had any hopes for him. At 9 o'clock sharp, Wang Jiaxi arrived at the practice room on time. Tiny Herb's official training was split into the morning and the afternoon. Coaches, those types of people, still weren't established in Glory. After all, Glory had only been a game for 10 years and the pro scene had only been around for 7 years. Everything was still in the testing stages. In the entire scene, first-class gods like Wang Jiaxi were already at the peak, whether it was in theory crafting or skill. As a result, there weren't any people with the skill to coach them. As a result, for clubs like Tiny Herb, they didn't have coaching staff and instead had advising staff. Their work was extremely complex: find information on their opponents, analyze the opponent's tactics, provide a few tactical options, research possible strategies for a map, etc. These were all tasks that the advising staff had to do. But the person with the highest authority was the team captain. To be frank, the highest value of the advising staff was saving energy for pro players. They saved a lot of energy for pro players. In the initial stages of the pro scene, those tasks all used to be work for the pro players themselves to do. Now that clubs had developed, with their financial resources, the money could now be used for these, giving pro players more time to concentrate on practicing and competing. Currently, in the Alliance, the only real coaches were Zhang Yue and Li Bo. The two were early generation pro players and were each in a small club working as coaches. Club Mysterious Fantasy were newcomers that had joined the Alliance just last year. The team was full of new players. Their skill levels varied and they lacked experience. The owner of the team also didn't have a lot of financial resources and didn't have any ambition. And in the end, he just randomly invited Zhang Yue to help the team. Who would have thought that the results would be so good? They ended up 17th place last season, which for a new team that had just entered the Alliance, was already quite good, considering that they didn't drop to the bottom 2 places. Some of the teams that entered for the first time spent money scouting people and tried to quickly build a team around pro players. Those teams all ended as terrible failures. This wasn't only a one-time thing either. From this perspective, coaches were quite cost-effective. At the very least, they were a small investment that had few risks. As a result, the new Club Bright Green followed Club Mysterious Fantasy and invited Li Bo. But currently, these two clubs were both in extremely bad situations. The previous year's 17th place Mysterious Fantasy directly fell to 20th place. And even though Bright Green was ranked 18th, the team they were above was Excellent Era. The Excellent Era, which in theory, shouldn't have fallen to 19th place. In addition, they were only ahead of Excellent Era by 3 points and no one believed that they would be able to beat Excellent Era and relegate them. Coaches were far from being deciding factors in the Glory competitive scene. This was something that everyone agreed upon. Zhang Yiwei and Li Bo were currently suffering in their bad situation and burned out from trying to prove their worth. Once Wang Jiexi arrived, the murmurs and whispering immediately stopped and all of the team members began focusing on their practice materials. Wang Jiexi walked around and, in the end, came to where the subs were located. Everyone there immediately sucked in a cold breath. Usually, everyone hoped that God Jiexi would notice them, but now they all hoped that they were invisible. Chao Yifan was the only exception. He had always been invisible. How was last night? Wang Jiexi, all in all, began speaking. The 5 players were all looking at each other. None of them dared to answer. In the end, Xiao Yun lifted his head and saw that Wang Jiexi was staring at him. He helplessly replied, we encountered a few difficulties. How? Wang Jiexi asked. Xiao Yun began thinking of how to word it. Team wiped out was too negative, he couldn't say that. He was the first to die and the other 4 had died later. Everyone had died at different times, so it wasn't technically a team wipeout. As a result, Xiao Yun avoided this phrase, carefully wording his reply, while paying attention to Wang Jiexi's expression. Minnesota, How Sly, Zhou Yebai and Lu Fei heard him talking and then regretted not speaking out first. Right now, Xiao Yun held the power of speech. That guy lightly skimmed over his initial loss and then vividly described the other Fa's wipeout. Moreover, he even had a bit of a, if I was there, that wouldn't have happened, tone. Zhou Yebai and Lu Fei both wanted to speak and argue, but seeing Wang Jiexi's dark expression, they didn't dare utter a word. Xiao Yun finally finished and concluded, we've decided to practice on these low-leveled accounts and then go look for him again tonight. After all of his explaining, besides the excuse, we aren't used to low-leveled accounts, there was nothing else he could come up with, so Xiao Yun could only say this. Wang Jiexi didn't comment. After a short while of silence, he suddenly said to Gao Yingji, what do you think, little Jia? Xiao Yun and the others were envious. Gao Yingji stood up, somewhat terrified, and then stammered, I think, really strong. What's really strong? Wang Jiexi asked. That Lord Grimm, Gao Yingji said. How strong? Wang Jiexi asked. Gao Yingji looked at Xiao Yun. Because Xiao Yun had only briefly skimmed over what had happened to him, he hadn't mentioned that Lord Grimm had played with him to his death using Vanishing Step. Even though Gao Yingji wasn't a very considerate person, he at least understood what Xiao Yun wanted. But Vanishing Step really was a good indicator of Lord Grimm's skill level. In the end, Gao Yingji thought like this. If he really did take Xiao Yun's intent into consideration and didn't tell the truth, then it would mean that he wouldn't be a simple and honest person. He quickly began saying the truth. I saw Lord Grimm use Vanishing Step to defeat Brother Xiao. When the 4 of us fought against him later, all of our movements were within their calculations. I think this was all done by Lord Grimm, too. Oh, what did you think of him? Wang Jiexi asked. He is extremely experienced. All of his attacks and skills were used to gain an advantage. And all of his decisions were very accurate, Gao Yingji said. Have you ever met someone as skilled as him before? Wang Jiexi said. Gao Yingji stared blankly and then said after quite a long while, only Captain. What about you all? Wang Jiexi's gaze looked over the others. Besides me, have you ever met this type of expert before? Xiao Yun and the others looked at each other. Lord Grimm was an expert. They all recognized that. But Gao Yingji had said that besides Wang Jiexi, he had never met someone as skilled as him. Wasn't that a bit too exaggerated? Do you guys not feel that it isn't possible for such an expert to appear in the new server? Wang Jiexi said. The 3 players were silent, although Lu Fei nodded her head. It was because you had that type of preconceived line of thinking that you felt he was so strong. But, you only recognized that he was strong, that's all. None of you could measure his skill, right? Wang Jiexi said. The 3 players continued to look at one another. Lord Grimm isn't an ordinary player, Wang Jiaxi said. Who is he? Lu Fei asked in doubt. There's an 80% chance that he's Yi Chu. What? Everyone cried out in surprise. Is he online right now? Wang Jiaxi asked. At this moment, everyone was on their main accounts practicing. Hearing the captain ask the question, Xiaoyun immediately logged out. He then swiped his 10th server account card and logged into the game. He searched for Lord Grimm's name and nodded his head. He's online. He was online last night and he's still online now. He's an all-nighter. No matter how he plays, he probably won't be playing during the afternoon. That should be his resting time. He'll most likely appear again tonight. After Wang Jiaxi calculated, he suddenly waved his hands and hit the table. Every player that heard it looked. Those that were wearing their headphones and didn't hear it were quickly reminded by the people beside them. After dinner, there'll be one more practice, Wang Jiaxi announced to the entire team. What practice? One of the main roster players asked his team captain. Kill a boss, Wang Jiaxi said. Boss? What boss? Some people didn't understand. The greatest boss in the history of glory, Wang Jiaxi said. Everyone stared foolishly. They still didn't understand what he meant. Fusheng, go grab a few account cards. They need to be 10th server accounts level 25 and up with their classes matching our team members. The reserve team members won't need them, Wang Jiaxi instructed. Deng Fusheng was Club Tiny Herb's vice-captain. His account was called Angelica, a knight. Okay, Deng Fusheng answered, got up, and then left. In the practice room, everyone couldn't help but begin discussing amongst themselves. In the end, Wang Jiaxi hit the table again. Right now, continue practicing. The practice room immediately quieted down. Shortly after, keyboard and mouse sounds rang out. There was no other noise. Wang Jiaxi was still at the reserve team's area. He asked, do you have any recordings of yesterday? Everyone stared blankly. Lu Fei blurted out, Captain, you never told us to record it. Zhou Yebai immediately glared at her. This girl really didn't know how to talk. She actually pushed the blame onto the team captain. In the far corners of the room, Chao Yifan weakly raised his hands. I have recordings. Oh, let me see them. Wang Jiaxi quickly walked over to Chao Yifan's computer. Chao Yifan hastily gave him his seat. Chapter 134, Tour Group. The recording was naturally in the recording character's perspective. Everything was automatic. The camera could be zoomed in and out, but it wasn't possible to rotate it. Chao Yifan's recording started from when his Ashen Moon rushed forward to Lord Grimm, blocking him to being surrounded and then attacked. These sections were naturally a mess. Apart from seeing his hardships and difficulties, nothing else could really be seen. On the side, Xiaoyun let out a sigh of relief. His death from Vanishing Step hadn't been recorded. Who knew that Wang Jiaxi's eyes and hands were so precise? He repeatedly clicked on the screen to pause the recording. He wasn't looking at Ashen Moon being attacked on all sides, but rather at Lord Grimm, where Cloudy Heavens was being hit in the air. Once, twice, thrice. Whole body, half body, a third of the body. In the end, Xiaoyun still lowered his head in embarrassment. He hadn't been recorded, but he could still be seen in this way. Wang Jiaxi didn't say anything. This section of the recording had ended when Ashen Moon escaped from the encirclement along with Gao Yingji's Weeping Crow. In the second section, the scene began somewhat choppy. Chao Yifan was clearly having Ashen Moon hide and then occasionally have him take a peek outside. Once the fighting started, the forgotten Chao Yifan had a good view of the entire scene up until Zhou Yebai's White Knight Black Day was killed. Only after his roar did Ashen Moon move up and begin fighting randomly. Everyone nervously stood behind Wang Jiaxi, watching the recording. They all had their heads down waiting for the scolding. But Wang Jiaxi didn't say anything. He instead got up, patted Chao Yifan, and then left. Xiaoyun and the others all hesitated. They didn't know what to do and in the end, returned to their computers to continue practicing. This morning went by as if their bodies and souls were separated. That afternoon, the vice-captain Deng Fusheng came back with account cards. Most of them were received from Herb Garden with the classes matching the main roster's classes. Club Tiny Herb, including Wang Jiexi, had a total of 6 players in the main roster with 5 players in the reserve team, for a total of 11 players. In the current league, this 6+5 setup was the most common arrangement. Unless there was a match that day, the night time was free for the players, though there was no lack of hard-working players that would continue to practice on their own. However, today, since the team captain had announced an activity for them, Tiny Herb's player gathered at the practice room. After swiping their account cards, they all entered the 10th server together. Everyone's expressions were somewhat odd. For their team to gather in the game, they had done it before in the heavenly domain, but never in a normal server. Our target, the player Lord Grimm. Everyone, don't be careless. It's very likely that this player is the retired Yi Chu. Wang Jiexi announced the purpose of their added practice. Once everyone heard this, they all became interested. They began discussing amongst each other. There were some in-game that had searched for his ID and then immediately reported to Wang Jiexi, "Captain, he's not online. He'll definitely come. Everyone, first get familiar with your character. They're all low-leveled characters that haven't yet reached level 30, so you guys aren't used to them, right?" Wang Jiexi said. Xiao Yun and the others were flushed in embarrassment. Was Captain mocking them? Was he? Or was he not? It was impossible to figure out what God Jiexi was thinking. At around 8 o'clock, Lord Grimm finally came online. The team members immediately informed Wang Jiexi. They then asked Herb Garden for Lord Grimm's whereabouts. Plantago Seed was also hesitant. After yesterday, Tiny Herb's vice-captain had personally come for accounts cards today. After counting all the cards he had given, he found that they added up to Tiny Herb's entire team. Was Team Tiny Herb going to tour around in the 10th server? Plantago Seed held his breath, alarmed. But there was no one to speak to. Because these account cards were only used for special cases, they were quite secretive, and definitely couldn't be taken out and talked about casually. Tonight, he saw all of the characters come online one by one. Plantago Seed didn't dare greet them and could only pace about, hoping that he would accidentally bump into Tiny Herb's tour group. Unfortunately, Tiny Herb's players were currently wandering around on their own and weren't grouped together. Only until 8 o'clock, when Lord Grimm went online, did some immediately ask him for Lord Grimm's location. Lord Grimm again? Plantago Seed stared blankly. Who exactly was this Lord Grimm? The entire Tiny Herb team was going to run over just to see him? Is he an alien? Plantago Seed thought while asking the guild to pay attention to Lord Grimm. After replying to them, he ran over to where Lord Grimm was located too. Desolate Land. This was where Herb Garden's players had seen Lord Grimm. If it was just for leveling, then Yi Shu would have definitely went to a higher leveled area to level. However, he still had a few level 28 quests, which had to be completed in Desolate Land. Mission description. Background story. These had all stayed the same for 10 years. Let alone Yi Shu, even Plantago Seed wouldn't read these. For experienced players, quests were only done for the rewards. And since some quests were long and stupid, they would only do these quests if they rewarded attribute points or skill books, those types of necessary items. Players would then impatiently do the prerequisite quests for those types of quests. Yi Shu was currently at Desolate Land to do these prerequisite quests. Yi Shu had used an online guide as a reference. He used the simplest route, where several quests could be done at once. Killing monsters, looking for people, looking for items, delivering items to people, etc. would all be turned in at once. In this way, the quests would be completed quickly. Lord Grimm is at Desolate Land. He's alone. After asking for the circumstances, Tiny Herb's team members reported the info to Wang Jiexi. To Desolate Land, Wang Jiexi said. The entire team of 11 flooded in towards Desolate Land. Vice-Captain Deng Fusheng, who was sitting beside Wang Jiexi, was rushing over, while saying, even if he really is Yi Shu, if we all go at once, won't that be a little excessive? Wang Jiexi turned his head and looked him in the eye, calmly saying, have the main force go duel him. Take turns, Deng Fusheng said. Group competition. We're 11, he's 1, Wang Jiaxi said. Deng Fusheng started sweating. Was there a difference? They quickly reached desolate land. Lord Grimm was doing quests, so he obviously wasn't hiding and was easily found. Plantago Seed had also arrived, but he didn't dare go over and say hello to them. He stealthily found a place to hide and watched from there. Seeing these 11 characters together, he knew that this was the real Team Tiny Herb. An urge swelled up in his heart. He wasn't sure whether he should record it or not. Main roster, go challenge him. Who's going up first? Wang Jiaxi asked in the practice room. After a moment of silence, someone said, I'll go. Okay, Wang Jiaxi answered. This player was called Liang Feng, a berserker. His playing was simple and rough, a very wild player. At this moment, he was using the level 27 Berserker Blood Frenzy with a level 25 purple weapon Breaking Water Greatsword, physical attack 310, magic attack 210, strength +10, collapsing mountain skill level +1. Besides this, he wore a few normal blue or green equipment from random dungeons and quests. It was already quite impressive that Plantago Seed was able to provide a purple weapon for everyone. Providing good equipment for everyone was too much for him to handle. Liang Feng's blood frenzy raised his sword and began heading over. The other 10 dispersed to let him go through. Yi Shu was still killing monsters, not paying attention. Xiao Yun and the others were lonely. With such a large group, how could he not have seen them? They had fought with him the other day, yet today, they weren't able to draw in any attention from him. This only meant that the other side hadn't put them in his eyes. Hey! After Blood Frenzy walked over, Liao Fang roared. Lord Grimm ignored him and continued to kill monsters. Everyone felt annoyed. Liao Fang had such a loud voice. They had all heard it. How could the closer Lord Grimm not have heard it? If he didn't respond, then that meant he was ignoring him. Hey, Liao Fang yelled again. He wanted to fight him fairly and didn't want to attack him while he was fighting monsters. Still ignored. Liao Fang's blood frenzy coiled around over to Lord Grimm's front so that he could be seen. I'll wait until you're done killing monsters, Liao Fang said, and then quietly waited for him. Lord Grimm killed the monsters he had gathered carelessly like he always did. Liao Fang waited until he saw that he was done. Just as he was about to attack, he saw that Lord Grimm stopped moving. Correct. Stopped moving. Not a single movement. The scene was completely still. Captain, Liao Fang looked for help somewhat gloomy. Hit him once and see what happens, Wang Jiaxi said. Okay, Liao Fang answered and then directly slashed at him. Lord Grimm still didn't move. He didn't move the entire time. Liao Fang then suddenly heard what seemed like a girl crying out in fear, distracting Liao Fang. Lord Grimm finally moved. Just as his slash was about to hit him, Lord Grimm suddenly crouched and the sword missed his head by a bit. He then rolled on the ground, just barely dodging the slash. What's going on? Who is this? In Happy Internet Cafe, Chen Guo cried out in alarm. Yi Shu hadn't reacted to the 11 people moving closer because he really hadn't seen them. He hadn't responded to Liao Fang's hello because he really hadn't heard it. He wasn't wearing headphones. How could he have heard it? He was just casually killing off monsters, but more importantly, he was talking with Chen Guo. After killing off a few monsters, he had stopped to concentrate on talking with boss Chen Guo. His boss was explaining to him internet cafe work, serious work. Chen Guo had been looking at his screen. When she saw Liao Fang suddenly attack, she cried out in alarm. Yi Shu turned his head and looked. He then immediately turned around and moved his character, unexpectedly dodging the blade in that short instant. I don't know, Yi Shu said, while looking around. He saw cloudy heavens and the other's ID and then immediately said, oh. Who? Chen Guo asked. Yi Shu shook his head. He wasn't too sure. But after seeing everyone's ID and seeing the classes of all 11 players, he was suddenly startled. Team Tiny Herb. Even though Yi Shu wasn't a Tiny Herb fan like Plantago Seed, he was old rivals with Tiny Herb, so he was actually even more familiar with Team Tiny Herb's classes than Plantago Seed. With just a glance, he had already determined this, making Yi Shu extremely surprised. At yesterday's fight with that group of players, Yi Shu had already figured that they weren't ordinary. They were pro-level, but he hadn't thought that they were from Tiny Herb. He had actually been suspecting that it was Lu Hao's doing. He thought that because that guy had failed to beat him in dungeon records, he decided to just directly go and kill him. But these 11 players' classes all clearly matched with Team Tiny Herb's classes. Yi Shu immediately thought of that day's intense fight with Plantago Seed. So it really was Wang Jiaxi controlling him? Yi Shu thought. He then looked at the other witch besides Weeping Crow among the 11 characters, Fiery Blaze. Behind Fiery Blaze's screen, Wang Jiaxi calmly said, "Liao Fang, go up." Chapter 135, What Unspecialized Means. Okay, Liang Fang replied. This time he didn't test him and seriously attacked. He tapped his keyboard and his character Blood Frenzy stamped his feet and shook his arm. A blood-red aura surrounded his body, the level 25 Berserker skill, Berserk. The Berserk status lasted 20 seconds. In those 20 seconds, the character's strength, attack speed, movement speed, and abnormal status resistance increased, while the character's intelligence, physical defense, and magic defense fell greatly. Every level required 20 skill points and its max level was 10. It was an essential buff for berserkers. Liang Fang just began and he was already in a berserk state. It really did fit with his personality. He liked to finish things as quick as possible. Endurance battles were battles that Liang Fang hated the most. After recognizing that the opponents were Team Tiny Herb, he instantly guessed what the other side's purpose was and helplessly shook his head. "Boss, can we talk later?" Yi Shu said to Chen Guo. Okay, hurry up." Chen Guo was even more worried than Yi Shu. Yi Shu's left hand tapped the keyboard, while his right hand adjusted his earphones. This sort of high-level battle required the assistance of sound. Glory was in a first-person perspective. Movements from behind were mainly determined through sound. Experienced pro players could determine how far away the opponent was behind them through how loud or soft the opponent's footsteps were. The frequency of the footsteps could also tell them how quick the opponent was moving. Yi Shu put on his headphones and immediately heard Blood Frenzy heavy steps. His character turned and he saw Bloody Frenzy with his two bloodshot eyes slashing towards him. Level 5 Berserker skill, Heavy Hit, which fully utilized the weapon's weight. The damage and weight of the weapon were directly correlated. Blood Frenzy's Breaking Water Greatsword was around 5 kilograms, more than twice as heavy as Lord Grimm's Myriad Manifestation Umbrella. This heavy hit's aura was extremely frightening. Yi Shu didn't take it head-on and leapt back to avoid it. Heavy Hit smashed into the ground with a loud bang. A small crater astonishingly appeared right where Lord Grimm had just been. Yi Shu's mouse swept and Lord Grimm stabbed forth with a dragon tooth. However, Liao Fang didn't have Blood Frenzy dodge. Instead, Blood Frenzy lifted his sword and used backslash, intending to fight with Lord Grimm head-on. The battle lance arrived first, hitting Blood Frenzy square in his chest. However, there was no stun. Under the Berserk status, the user would have increased resistances to status effects. Dragon Tooth's stun effect wasn't very high originally. With the increased resistances, he naturally wasn't stunned. Along with the sword itself, the great sword brought along chunks of earth, which flew towards Lord Grimm. However, Lord Grimm had recovered and leapt backwards, dodging this attack. Liao Fang stared blankly. He immediately knew that the attack speed of the battle lance in Lord Grimm's hands didn't have the slowest attack speed of one like he had presumed. Because of this disadvantage in attack speeds, fighting Lord Grimm head-on wouldn't work. Pro-level battles were like this. Any random detail could give them lots of information. Even though Liang Fang's Blood Frenzy was in a berserk state, it was only a level 2 berserk. Even when berserk was maxed, it would only increase attack speed by 1, which would still be far from the Myriad Manifestation Umbrella's attack speed of 5. Even though being slower didn't guarantee a loss, Liang Fang was currently fighting against a top-tier god. Along with his battle lance, which had an attack speed of 5, that was simply too difficult. Yi Shu fully utilized his advantage though and easily suppressed Liang Fang's Blood Frenzy. After 20 seconds, Blood Frenzy's berserk status ended and he clearly hadn't succeeded in his original intent of a quick battle. While fighting against Blood Frenzy, Yi Shu watched the others and discovered that the other 10 players didn't have any intent on acting, even when he had Lord Grimm deliberately enter their attack range. Yi Shu smiled. His hand speed suddenly exploded out. Lord Grimm's myriad manifestation umbrella immediately changed 3 times, completing 3 different classes' skills. Blood Frenzy was blasted out. However, as a pro player, he naturally didn't have any trouble quick recovering. Blood Frenzy rolled, and just as he was about to stand up, Yi Shu's Lord Grimm had already used a shadow clone technique to shift to his position. The distance he would fly had clearly been calculated by Lord Grimm. Unable to get up in time, Blood Frenzy was torn up into a bloody mess and died shortly after. Liang Fang was staring blankly at his screen. From beginning to end, he hadn't found any chance of winning. Suppressed, completely suppressed. Every plan, every movement had been calculated by his opponent. The opponent's movements in the beginning weren't too quick, but even so, he had been completely suppressed so easily. Once the opponent's hand speed burst forth, his end had quickly come. In-game, everything was silent. Tiny Herb's practice room was also completely silent. Xiaobi, your turn. Wang Jiaxi spoke and chose a player. Okay, he answered. Liu Xiaobi, a very strange-sounding name, was widely known for his hand speed. Even for pro players, there were differences in hand speed. Liu Xiaobi could be ranked as having the fastest absolute hand speed in Tiny Herb. However, in terms of effective hand speed, he lost to Captain Wang Jiaxi by a level. Pro players clearly knew that absolute hand speed was just for show, while effective hand speed was the truly valuable in real combat. Liu Xiaobi still had a ways to go there. His hand speed wasn't being completely utilized yet. Liu Xiaobi was a blade master. Once he heard Captain's orders, he immediately had his character move out. //draw, level 27 Blade Master, Lightsaber Mastery, level 25 Purple Weapon Flickering Light Sword. Physical Attack, 233, Magic Attack, 253. Strength plus 11. Attacks had a 2% chance to dizzy. Wait a minute, Yi Shu suddenly said. Everyone was startled. Are you guys planning on doing a group competition? Yi Shu said. Yeah, Wang Jiaxi unexpectedly answered back. Lord Grimm was now standing face to face with his fiery blaze. Liang Fang's blood frenzy had been killed by Lord Grimm under his watch. Too annoying, Yi Shu said. Then what do you suggest? Wang Jiaxi asked. Let's just do a team competition, Yi Shu said. Everyone immediately went into an uproar. This guy actually wanted to do a team competition with the 10 of them. The problem was, he was only a single person. And the 10 players over here weren't any ordinary 10 players. They were Team Tiny Herb, last year's champions. This year, they were also the favorites for being champions, and they hoped to be the second team to be consecutive champions like Excellent Era. To be looked down upon like this, everyone was immediately infuriated on the spot. Liu Xiaobi already began shouting, Captain, let me destroy him. What happened? Liang Fang, who had just revived, was still on the way there, so he didn't know what was happening. That guy actually said he wanted to fight against our entire team by himself. F***ck, a teammate next to him said. Liang Fang was startled. He wanted to say something, but he held back. He had lost, extremely miserably and tragically, and was thoroughly convinced by his loss that his opponent's experience, knowledge, and mechanical skill were all above his own by a level. Plus with an unspecialized character's advantage. In all honesty, Liang Fang had never seen an unspecialized character before. Unspecialized characters had already become legends when he had first started playing Glory. He had only heard a few old teammates talk about how strong and what unspecialized characters were. Today, he had finally experienced their might personally, which was clearly even more abnormal than what the old teammates had said. Unspecialized characters' attacks were impossible to predict. Although they were only low-leveled skills, it included skills from all 24 classes. How could anyone figure out which one of those skills he was going to use? This type of advantage would still exist at high levels. Unspecialized characters only lacked the explosive power of high-level skills. Right now, Liang Fang really wanted to say that no one was his opponent if they dueled. Even if Captain had personally come up, Liang Fang still wasn't confident. He was a pro player with his own clear judgment. He wasn't like those loyal fans who exaggerated their idol's strength. But to say that no one was his opponent would arouse Lord Grimm's fighting spirits. Even if this player was extremely skilled, to actually want to solo their entire team, even Liang Fang, who knew how terrifying he was, couldn't help but feel that he was being a bit too ridiculous. "Captain, I'm going up," Liu Xiaobi yelled, sucked in a deep breath, and then moved. His Blade Master / Draw used a triple slash to instantly close in on Lord Grimm and used an upward slash. Dong! Lord Grimm had unexpectedly drawn his sword and then used guard to block it. Sword draw. This thought immediately flashed across Liu Xiaobi's mind. At this moment, Blade Masters would definitely use sword draw, this fairly long-ranged attack, to chase him down. He had to be quick. Liu Xiaobi was a player with high hand speed. He of course loved to go all in. Fight with hand speed. This thought flashed through his mind. His fingers also quickly moved. / Draw sheathed his sword and then pulled it out. Sword Draw's sword light instantly flashed. Ta 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 ta. A string of crisp machine gun sounds rang out. / Draw's sword draw was instantly dissipated and his entire body poured out blood. If this wasn't a game, he'd have become a corpse bleeding from bullet holes long ago. Launcher skill, Gatling gun. At this moment, Liu Xiaobi finally understood what an unspecialized character was and what others meant by it having attacks impossible to predict. He originally wanted to compete in hand speed and see whose sword draw was faster. However, his opponent didn't use sword slash and instead moved backwards to use Gatling gun. No matter how far sword draw reached, how could it reach farther than a gun? The chain of bullets hit Liu Xiaobi. Just as Gatling gun finished, the opponent's sword draw suddenly came out. Liu Xiaobi deserved to be called a player with high hand speed. In this short instant, he completed a guard. / Draw lifted his sword upright. Dong! The sword draw was blocked. Just as he was being hit back by the blow, he heard 3 consecutive sounds. The opponent's sword had turned into a gun. Launcher skill, anti-tank missile. Liu Xiaobi wanted to hide, but in the end he was still hit. The 3 anti-tank missiles weren't in a straight line. The opponent used tri-shot and the 3 anti-tank missiles were pulled into a triangle formation, enshrouding an area. No matter how / Draw moved, he would be hit by one. Following after were a string of low-leveled skills, no signs, impossible to predict. Liu Xiaobi and Liang Fang were the same. They had only heard of the era when unspecialized characters reigned free. And this time, they had personally experienced it for themselves. Defeated. Liu Xiaobi was also defeated handily. And he was the same as Liang Fang. He had been beaten extremely miserably without any chance of fighting back. This wasn't supposed to be possible for pro players. Even if they were against god-level opponents, such as their team captain, it shouldn't go so far as to not even having a chance of winning. Chances always existed, it just depended on whether or not the individual could grasp it. But when fighting against Lord Grimm, Liu Xiaobi and Liang Fang both discovered that there was only one way to not lose: don't go up and duel him.